Maya Torres stepped off the transport ship and looked around the massive space station that housed the Galactic Defense Academy. The metal walls stretched high above her head, and strange lights cast purple and blue shadows everywhere. She had never seen anything like this place before. The other students walking around her looked nothing like humans. Some had long pointed ears and moved like dancers. Others had scales covering their skin and walked on powerful legs that reminded Maya of dinosaurs. From old Earth books, a few had tentacles instead of arms and floated in clear tubes filled with water. Maya pulled her simple brown bag closer to her shoulder. She felt very small and very alone in this place. The academy had accepted her as the first human exchange student, but now she wondered if that was a good idea. Everyone else seemed so much more advanced than Hera. Tall figure with silver skin and bright golden eyes approached her. The being wore the dark blue uniform of the academy and had 4 arms instead of 2. Maya tried not to stare as the creature spoke in perfect English. "Welcome, human student. I am Administrator Veltar. You must be Maya." Torres from Earth. Maya nodded and tried to smile. "Yes, sir, I am ready to begin my studies here." The administrator looked at her with what might have been curiosity, or maybe doubt. Maya could not tell. "With alien faces you will find our methods very different from what you know on your world. The other species here have been part of galactic civilization for thousands of years, longer than humans." "I understand, sir," Maya said quietly. "I will work hard to keep up good." Veltar handed her a small device. "This will translate most languages and show you around the station. Your room is in Section 7. With the other first-year students, classes begin tomorrow." Maya took the device and thanked the administrator. She followed the glowing arrows on the floor that led to her new home. The corridors were full of students talking in languages that sounded like music, or growling, or clicking sounds. Her translator device made sense of some words, but not all. When she reached Section 7, Maya found her room number and pressed her palm to the door scanner. The door slid open to reveal a small but clean space with a bed, desk, and window that looked out into space. She set down her bag and sat on the bed, feeling overwhelmed. Soft knock came at her door. Maya opened it to find a female with long pointed ears and skin that seemed to glow slightly. The being was tall and graceful with silver hair that moved like water. She wore the same academy uniform as everyone else. "Hello, I am Zarenth from the woodland realms of Alfheim. You must be the human everyone is talking about." Maya felt her face get warm. "Everyone is talking about me." The elf smiled in a way that seemed kind. "Yes, but do not worry. Most are just curious. We have never had a human student before. My room is next to yours. I thought you might like to know." Someone nearby. "Thank you," Maya said. "I am Maya Torres. It is nice to meet you." "Zarenth, please call me Zara. Everyone does." "Would you like to eat dinner together in the main hall? I can show you how everything works." Here Maya felt relief flood through her. "That would be wonderful." They walked together through the corridors and Zara pointed out important places like the library, training rooms, and medical center. Other students looked at Maya as they passed. Some seemed curious, others seemed to think she did not belong. Here the main hall was enormous, with tables floating at different heights to accommodate different species. Maya saw students who looked like walking trees, sitting with others who had wings instead of arms. A group of reptilian beings sat together making hissing sounds that her translator said were Juxara. Led her to a table where several other students were already eating. One was a large reptilian female with dark green scales and yellow eyes. Another was a pale blue being with gills on his neck. The third looked almost human, except for the silver markings covering her skin. "Everyone, this is Maya, the human student I told you about," Zara said. As they sat down, the reptilian female looked at Maya with interest. "So, you are from the famous warrior planet Earth. I am Vexica, from the Soros Confederacy. We have heard stories about your species fighting skills." Maya felt uncomfortable. "Stories? Like what?" The blue being leaned forward. "Your people are known for being very aggressive in combat. Even though you have primitive technology, you somehow win battles against much stronger enemies. It is quite puzzling. I am not a soldier, Maya said quickly. I am just a student here to learn. The silver-marked female nodded. I am Luna from the Crystal Worlds. We study many different species. Here you should not feel bad about being less advanced. Everyone starts somewhere. Maya wanted to say that humans were not less advanced, but she kept quiet. Instead, she asked, what kind of classes do we take here? Haran answered, we study military history, combat tactics, weapons technology, and leadership. There is also a class called Tactical Combat Analysis, where we watch real battle footage from different species. Wars. That sounds interesting, Maya said, though she felt nervous about it. Vexica made a sound like laughter. Your species footage should be quite entertaining to analyze. I hear humans just run at their enemies without any real strategy. The others laughed and Maya felt her face get hot again. She wanted to defend her people, but she also did not want to make enemies on her first day. So she just smiled and changed the subject. Over the next few days, Maya attended her classes and tried to fit in. The other students were not mean to her, but they clearly thought humans were primitive and simple. Her instructors were patient, but she could tell they did not expect much from Haran. Military history class Professor Cthulhan used his tentacles to point at star maps while explaining ancient battles. The cephalopod had a voice like ocean waves and knew everything about warfare going back millions of years. And weapons technology, Maya learned about energy shields, plasma cannons, and gravity weapons that could crush entire ships. The instructor seemed surprised that Maya asked so many detailed questions about how things worked. Combat tactics class was taught by a fierce-looking warrior from the Blade Dancer civilization. She moved like lightning and could fight with 8 weapons at once. Maya watched carefully and took notes about everything, but it was tactical combat analysis that Maya worried about most. Professor Kethlon had announced they would spend the semester studying battle footage from different species. Maya knew that eventually they would see human combat videos, and she was not sure what the other students would think. On Friday of her first week, Zara invited Maya to study together in the library. They found a quiet corner with floating chairs and holographic displays. You seem nervous about something, Zara said, as they opened their textbooks. Is everything all right? Maya looked at her new friend. Zara had been kind to her all week and helped her understand the academy culture, but Maya was not sure how much she should tell anyone about her past. I just want to do well here, Maya said. I know everyone thinks humans are primitive, but we are not stupid. Zara tilted her head. I do not think you are stupid, Maya. You ask very good questions in class, and your essays show deep understanding of military principles. Sometimes you seem to know more than you should for someone with no combat experience. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Your tactical analyses are quite sophisticated. You write like someone who has actually been in battles, not just read about them. Zara paused. Where exactly did you study before coming here? Maya looked away. Just basic education on Earth, nothing special. Zara seemed like she wanted to ask more questions, but she did not push. Instead, they studied together until late in the evening. Maya was grateful for the friendship, but worried about what would happen when her classmates learned the truth about her background. As she lay in bed that night, looking out at the stars, Maya thought about home and about the battles she had fought. The academy students had no idea what humans were really capable of. They would learn soon enough when Professor Kethlon showed the human combat footage. Maya just hoped she could keep her secret. Until then, she was not ready to explain why a simple human student knew so much about warfare, or why she sometimes woke up at night hearing the sounds of combat in her dreams. The next week would bring new challenges, and Maya knew her peaceful time at the academy was about to end. Professor Kethlon floated in his water-filled teaching pod at the front of the classroom. His tentacles moved gracefully as he activated the holographic display system. The room darkened, and dozens of alien students settled into their seats. Maya sat in the back row next to Zara, trying to stay invisible today. We begin our semester-long project analyzing combat effectiveness across different species. The professor announced. His voice bubbled slightly through the water, but the translators made his words clear. Each week, we will study footage from a different civilization and discuss their strengths and weaknesses. Maya felt her stomach twist into knots. She knew what was coming, but hoped it would take several weeks before they reached human footage. Maybe she could think of an excuse to miss class that day. First, we will examine the elegant warfare techniques of the woodland realms. Professor Kethlon continued. A series of tentacles-pressed controls, and the holographic display came to life. The footage showed a forest world under attack by mechanical invaders. The defenders were elves like Zara, moving through the trees with impossible grace. They carried weapons that looked like they were made of crystallized light, and their armor seemed to be grown rather than built. Maya watched in amazement as the elven warriors fought. The way they moved was like a deadly dance. Every step and strike flowed perfectly into the next. They worked together without speaking, as if they could read each other's minds. Their energy weapons cut through enemy metal like it was paper. Look at their coordination, Vexica said from across the room. They move as one mind in many bodies. Very impressive. Zara smiled proudly beside Maya. Her people had reason to be proud. The elven combat style was beautiful and devastatingly effective. The enemy machines fell like wheat before a scythe. The elves never waste movement or energy. Professor Kethlon observed. Notice how they used the terrain to their advantage, and how their weapons are perfectly suited to their fighting style. This is the result of thousands of years of military evolution. The class took notes and asked questions about elven tactics. Maya found herself analyzing their techniques with professional interest. She noticed things that others missed, like how the elves positioned themselves to have multiple escape routes, and how they conserved energy for critical moments. When the class ended, Zara walked with Maya toward the dining hall. What did you think of my people's fighting style? It was incredible, Maya said. Honestly, the way they moved was like poetry, but deadly poetry. Zara laughed. That is a good way to describe it. We believe that combat should be an art form, not just violence. Your people must have their own fighting traditions. Maya nodded, but did not elaborate. They found seats in the dining hall, and were joined by Vexica and Luna. The conversation turned to comparing different species, military approach. We see footage from my people, Vexica said with pride. The Soros Confederacy has conquered 12 star systems through superior pack tactics. Luna looked interested. I have read about your people's hunting strategies. You attack in coordinated groups like the predators on your homeworld. Exactly. Vexica showed her sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. We do not fight alone, like some species. We understand that the pack is stronger than any individual. Maya listened but said little. She was thinking about next week, and wondering what Soros combat would look like. She did not have to wait long to find out. The following week, Professor Cthulhan presented footage from a Soros military campaign. The reptilian warriors attacked their enemies like a pack of ancient Earth velociraptors. Some Soros fighters drew enemy attention, while others flanked from multiple directions. They used their natural speed and strength, along with energy weapons and powered armor. The footage showed a siege of an enemy stronghold. The Soros forces moved like a living organism, flowing around obstacles and striking at weak points. They communicated through scent markers and subsonic calls that their enemies could not detect. Vexica said during the viewing. My people understand that individual heroics are foolish. The pack survives and conquers together. The other students murmured agreement. Maya had to admit the tactics were effective. The Soros had turned their predator instincts into a devastating military strategy. They overwhelmed their enemies through superior coordination and relentless pressure. Your species has perfected the art of pack warfare, Professor Kethlon told Vexica. The way you combine natural abilities with technology is quite remarkable. Maya noticed that the Soros warriors never retreated even when badly outnumbered. They seemed to have no concept of individual survival, only pack success. It was impressive, but also terrifying. The third week brought footage from Professor Kethlon's own people. The cephalopods fought in underwater environments using technology that seemed like magic to Maya. Their tentacles allowed them to operate multiple weapon systems simultaneously while they're intelligent. Eyes tracked dozens of targets. The cephalopod warriors moved through underwater cities like living computers, calculating angles and probabilities faster than any organic mind should be able to process. Their weapons created localized whirlpools and pressure waves that crushed enemy vessels from the inside. Fascinating, Luna commented. They fight like living machines. All logic and calculation with no wasted effort. Professor Kethlon tentacles rippled with what Maya had learned was pride. My people believe that warfare is ultimately a mathematical problem with optimal solutions. We have spent millions of years perfecting our calculations. Maya watched the footage with growing unease. Each species they had studied so far was incredibly advanced with sophisticated weapons and tactics that had been refined over countless generations. When the class finally saw human combat footage, how would it compare? The humans will probably look quite primitive after seeing this, Vexica whispered. To her friends, Maya heard the comment and felt her hands clench into fists after the cephalopod footage. Professor Kethlon announced the schedule for the remaining weeks. We will next study the Crystal World's defensive strategies, then the Blade Dancer rapid assault techniques. Finally, we will conclude with recently acquired footage from the Terran Defense Archives. Maya's heart started beating faster. The moment she had been dreading was getting closer every week. The other students seemed more impressed with the advanced civilizations they studied. She could only imagine what they would think when they saw humans fighting with primitive weapons and desperate tactics. That evening, Maya sat alone in her room staring out at the stars. She thought about the battles she had fought and the friends she had lost. The other students talked about warfare like it was an academic subject, but Maya knew the reality of combat. She had seen what it cost to win against impossible odds. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Maya opened it to find Zara holding 2 cups of steaming liquid. I brought you some tea from my homeworld, Zara said. You looked troubled in class today. Maya accepted the cup gratefully and invited Zara to sit by the window. The tea tasted like flowers and sunshine and helped calm her nerves. You have been very quiet lately, Zara observed. Is something bothering you? Maya considered telling her friend the truth, but decided it was still too risky. I suppose. I am nervous about how human tactics will compare to all these advanced civilizations. Sarah nodded understandingly. I can see why that would worry you. But remember that effectiveness is not always about having the most advanced technology. Sometimes simpler approaches can be surprisingly successful. Maya looked at her friend with new respect. Zara was more thoughtful than most of the other students who seemed obsessed with technological superiority. Do you really think so? Maya asked. Of course. Zara smiled. Some of the most elegant solutions are also the simplest ones. Besides, your people must have some interesting approaches to warfare. Every species develops unique methods based on their environment and culture. Maya nodded, but inside, she was thinking about just how unique human warfare really was. The other students had no idea what desperation could drive people to accomplish. They had never fought against impossible odds with inadequate weapons and sheer determination. As the weeks passed, Maya continued to watch footage from different civilizations. Each one was more impressive than the last. The Crystal Worlds created defensive shields that could stop entire fleets. The Blade Dancers moved faster than the eye could follow, turning individual warriors into one-person armies. Maya also noticed something that the other students missed. None of these species had ever faced true desperation. They fought with overwhelming technological advantages and ancient traditions. That assumed certain rules of engagements. Humans had never had such luxuries. Maya people had been forced to adapt and innovate just to survive. They had learned to win through unpredictability, creativity, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The time was coming when her classmates would see exactly what that looked like, and Maya was not sure any of them were prepared for the reality of human warfare. The day Maya had been dreading finally arrived. Professor Kethlin floated in his teaching pod with what seemed like excitement rippling through his tentacles. The classroom was full as usual with students from a dozen different species, all eager to see what human warfare looked like today. We examined combat footage from the youngest spacefaring species in our galaxy. Professor Kethlon announced the humans of Earth have only been part of galactic civilization for 50 years, but they have already gained quite a reputation. Maya sank lower in her seat, trying to become invisible. Zara sat beside her, taking notes, as usual, while Vexica and the other students leaned forward with curiosity. This particular footage comes from the Battle of Proxima Station 3 years ago, Professor Kethlin continued. It shows human defensive tactics against an unknown aggressor species. The humans were heavily outnumbered and outgunned, but the results were quite unexpected. The holographic display activated, and Maya felt her heart stopped. The familiar sight of Proxima Station appeared before them. Maya knew every corridor and every room of that place. She had lived and fought there for 6 months, defending it against waves of enemy attacks. The footage began with external shots, showing the massive enemy fleet surrounding the small human station. Maya counted the ships automatically, 47 heavy cruisers against 1 small outpost. The odds had been impossible. Look at the size difference, Luna gasped. The human station is tiny compared to those warships. How could they possibly defend against such a force? Professor Kethlon tentacles moved across his controls. Switching to internal footage, the scene showed human soldiers running through corridors that Maya remembered all too well. Emergency lights cast red shadows everywhere, and the sound of weapons fire echoed through the station. The humans appear to be in complete chaos, Vexica observed with amusement. Look how they run around, with no formation or discipline. This should be over quickly. But Maya watched with different eyes. She could see the purpose behind every movement. The soldiers were not running in panic. They were executing a carefully planned defensive strategy. She had written that strategy herself. The camera focused on a small unit of Marines defending a critical junction. Maya recognized the location immediately, Corridor 7 leading to the power core. Her throat went dry as she realized what footage they were about to see there. The professor said, pointing with a tentacle. Look at this human female leading the defense. Notice how young she appears to be, yet the other soldiers follow her commands without question. Maya stared at the screen in horror. There she was, 3 years younger, but unmistakably herself. She wore the dark combat armor of Earth Defense Force and carried a plasma rifle that looked primitive compared to alien weapons. But her eyes held a determination that made Maya remember exactly how desperate that moment had been. The footage showed the younger Maya directing her squad as enemy soldiers poured through a breach in the station hull. The humans were outnumbered 5 to 1, but they held their ground using tactics that seemed impossible. Fascinating, Professor Kethlon observed. The humans are using the station's own structure as a weapon. Notice how they channel the enemy into narrow spaces where numbers mean nothing. Maya watched herself on screen and remembered every detail of that battle. The enemy had superior weapons and armor, but they had made the mistake of fighting humans on human terms. In the close quarters of the station corridors, human adaptability had been worth more than alien technology. The human tactics make no sense, Vexica said with frustration. They split their forces and attack from multiple directions at once. It should not work, but somehow it does. Sarah leaned forward, studying the screen intently. Maya noticed her friend was taking very detailed notes and seemed more interested than usual in the tactical analysis. Wait, Luna said, suddenly pausing the footage. That human female in command, she looks familiar. Maya felt ice form in her stomach as Luna enhanced the image, showing her younger self in clear detail. The resemblance was obvious to anyone who looked closely. Vexica turned to stare at Maya, then back at the screen. That cannot be a coincidence. The facial structure is identical. I was thinking the same thing, Zara said quietly. Her voice sounded strange. Maya, do you have any relatives in the Earth Defense Force? Maya opened her mouth to deny it, but no words came out. On screen, her younger self was shouting orders that the audio system picked up clearly. The sound of her own voice filled the classroom, and there was no hiding anymore. That is definitely the same voice, Vexica declared. She turned to face Maya. Fully, you are in this footage, are not youth. Entire class was now staring at Maya. She felt trapped like a small animal surrounded by predators. Her secret was finally out, and she had no idea how to explain herself. Professor Kethlon's tentacles moved gracefully as he paused the footage. Maya Torres, would you care to explain your connection to this battle? Maya stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the room. Watching her, she had known this moment would come eventually, but she still was not prepared for it. The weight of her hidden past pressed down on her, like a physical force. That is me, Maya said simply. I was the commanding officer for Sector 7 during the Battle of Proxima Station. The classroom erupted in surprised voices from a dozen different species. Students who had spent weeks treating Maya like a primitive newcomer suddenly realized they had been sitting next to a combat veteran. You were a soldier, Zara breathed. Her silver eyes were wide with shock. But you said you were just a student. I am a student now, Maya replied. I came here to learn about other species' military traditions, not to talk about my own past. Vexica was studying the paused image with new interest. You were how old? In this footage, 1819, and you were commanding troops in a major battle. Maya nodded, feeling exposed and vulnerable. I joined the defense force when I turned 18. Most humans do when their worlds are threatened, but this is incredible, Professor Kethlon said. His tentacles were moving rapidly with excitement. You held off a force 40 times your size with primitive weapons and untrained soldiers. How is such a thing possible? Maya looked around the classroom at faces that now showed respect instead of condescension. She realized there was no point in hiding anymore. These students were going to see everything eventually. We won because we had to, Maya said simply. There was nowhere to retreat, and no reinforcements coming. If we lost the station, thousands of civilians would die, so we did not lose. The professor resumed the footage, and Maya watched herself relive the battle. That had changed her life. The enemy had broken through in 3 places, and her unit was down to half strength. But they had held the line using weapons and tactics that the aliens had never encountered. Look at how they adapt, Zara said with genuine admiration. Every time the enemy changes tactics, the humans immediately counter. There is no hesitation, no confusion. They flow like water around obstacles. Maya remembered the exhaustion and terror of that battle, but she also remembered the pride. Her squad had been ordinary humans facing alien technology, and they had won through pure determination and innovative thinking. The footage continued for another hour, showing the entire battle from multiple angles. Maya watched herself make decisions that had seemed natural at the time but now looked impossible. The final scene showed the enemy fleet retreating after losing more than half their ships to a single human outpost. When the display finally went dark, the classroom was completely silent. Maya could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet. Everyone was staring at her with expressions she could not identify. Professor Kethlon was the first to speak. Maya Torres, it appears you have been somewhat modest about your background. This battle is considered one of the most brilliant defensive actions in modern military history. Maya felt her face burn with embarrassment. I was just doing my job. Sir Vexica made a sound that might have been laughter. Just doing your job. You turned a certain defeat into an impossible victory using tactics that should not work according to any military theory. I know. Zara reached over and touched Maya's arm gently. Why did you not tell us? You must have known we would see this footage. Eventually Maya looked at her friend and saw genuine curiosity instead of accusation. I wanted to fit in here. I did not want to be treated differently because of my military service, but this changes everything, Luna said. You are not just some primitive human student, you are a proven combat leader with real experience. Maya shook her head. I am still just a student. I came here to learn from other species, not to teach them. Professor Kethlon tentacles rippled with what Maya had learned meant deep thought. I think, Maya Torres, that you may find teaching and learning are not as different as you believe. Your experiences could be quite valuable to your fellow students as The class ended and students filed out. Maya remained in her seat, feeling drained. The secret she had tried so hard to keep was finally out now. She would have to face the consequences of being known as the human warrior who had done the impossible. Zara waited until the room was empty before speaking. You know there is more footage coming. Maya, what else are we going to see? Maya looked at her friend and realized that the Battle of Proxima Station was just the beginning. There were other battles, other impossible victories that her classmates would soon discover. Her quiet time at the Academy was definitely over. Next week, they would see the footage from the Titan Nebula, and Maya knew that battle would be even harder to explain than this one. Word spread quickly through the Academy that the quiet human student was actually a decorated war veteran. Maya found herself the center of attention wherever she went. Other students who had barely noticed her before now stopped to stare and whisper. Among them were expressions of curiosity, respect, and sometimes fear. Maya tried to return to her normal routine, but everything had changed. In military history class, other students asked her opinion about ancient battles and weapons technology. They wanted to know how humans modified their equipment in combat tactics. The instructor actually called on Maya to demonstrate techniques. The worst part was the waiting. Maya knew that more footage was coming. Professor Kethlon had made it clear that the human combat analysis would continue for several weeks. Each battle would reveal more about her past, and Maya was not sure she was ready for her classmates to see everything. Zara had been her closest supporter through the chaos of recognition. She helped Maya deal with the constant questions and provided a buffer against the more aggressive students who wanted to challenge the human warrior to prove themselves. You cannot hide forever, Zara said, as they sat together in the library studying. For upcoming exams, the professor has at least 3 more weeks of human footage planned. Maya looked up from her textbook feeling tired. I know. I just hoped I could have a normal student experience. Here Zara tilted her head. Normal is overrated. Besides, your experiences make you more interesting, not less. The way you commanded that battle at Proxima Station was brilliant. Maya felt uncomfortable with the praise. It did not feel brilliant when I was living it. It felt like barely controlled chaos. That is what made it so impressive, Zara replied. You took chaos and turned it into victory. Most species rely on perfect planning and overwhelming force. Your people seem to thrive in impossible situations. The next week, Professor Kethlon announced they would examine footage from the Battle of Titan Nebula. Maya felt her stomach drop as the holographic display activated. She remembered that battle all too well. It had been even more desperate than Proxima Station. The footage began with a view of the massive space facility built inside a nebula cloud. The Titan research station had been home to 50,000 scientists and their families when the enemy attacked. Maya had been assigned there as part of a routine security detail. Look at the size of that station, Vexica said with amazement. It must be 20 kilometers across. How could anyone defend something so large? The enemy fleet appeared on screen, emerging from the colorful gas clouds like deadly shadows. Maya counted the ships and felt the same despair she had experienced 3 years ago. 60 heavy warships against a research station with minimal defenses. This battle should have been over in minutes, Professor Kethlon observed. The attacking force had every possible advantage, yet somehow the humans held out for 14 hours. How is such a thing possible? The footage switched to internal cameras, showing Maya at age 19 wearing the uniform of a junior security officer. She looked even younger than in the Proxima Station footage, but her eyes held the same determined fire. There she is. Again, Luna pointed at the screen. Maya Torres commanding the defense. How did someone so young get put in charge of such an important battle? Maya remembered the answer. All too clearly, the senior officers had been killed in the first attack, and she had been the highest-ranking survivor. The choice had been simple: take command, or watch everyone die. The footage showed the moment when the enemy breached the station. Hull in 7 different places. Maya watched her younger self make the decision that had saved 50,000 lives. She had ordered the evacuation of the outer sections and consolidated the defense around the central core, but that meant abandoning most of the station. Vexica observed. The humans are retreating. How is this a victory? Wait. And see, Zara said quietly. She was studying the tactical display with professional interest. Maya, I think you created a trap. Maya nodded reluctantly. The station was built in modules connected by narrow passages. When we sealed off the outer sections, the enemy had to funnel through choke points to reach the civilians. The footage continued, showing Maya coordinating the defense from the central command center. She had only 500 security personnel against thousands of enemy soldiers, but she used the station's architecture to multiply her forces. Effectiveness ingenious. Professor Kethlon commented the humans turned their own facility into a fortress. They are fighting on prepared ground, using every advantage the environment provides. Maya watched herself on screen directing the battle through exhaustion and desperation. Her forces were cut off, surrounded, and outnumbered, but they held every critical passage. The enemy had superior weapons, but they could not use their numbers effectively in the narrow corridors. Then came the moment Maya had been dreading. The footage showed her making the decision that had earned her a medal and nightmares that still woke her up. The enemy had broken through the final defensive line and was advancing toward the civilian shelters. Look at this, Professor Kethlon said as the camera focused on Maya. The station hull has been breached, and the human commander is alone in the passage. What is she doing? Maya watched her younger self drag heavy equipment into the breach, creating a makeshift barrier. The enemy was pouring through the hole in the hull, and someone had to hold them back, while the final evacuation finished. She is plugging the breach by herself. Zara breathed. How long can one person hold against so many? 14 hours. Maya said quietly. That is how long it took to evacuate all the civilians. The classroom went silent as they watched Maya fight. Alone in the damaged corridor, she used every trick she knew, switching weapons when ammunition ran out, creating improvised explosives from station equipment, and even fighting hand-to-hand when necessary. The footage showed her younger self collapsing from exhaustion 3 times, but getting back up each time. The enemy kept coming in waves, but the narrow breach meant they could only attack 1 or 2 at a time. Maya turned their advantage in numbers into a disadvantage. This is impossible, Vexica said, staring at the screen. No single warrior can hold a position for 14 hours against continuous attack. Your human must have had some kind of enhancement. Maya shook her head. I was not enhanced, just stubborn. Professor Kethlon tentacles moved rapidly across his controls, bringing up tactical analysis charts. The human commander is using minimum effort for maximum effect. Every movement serves multiple purposes: weapon selection, terrain use, even psychological warfare. The footage continued, showing the rescue ships finally arriving to evacuate the remaining civilians. Maya watched her younger self collapse as soon as the last transport left. She had held the line until everyone was safe, then simply passed out from exhaustion. When the battle footage ended, the classroom remained silent for a long moment. Maya felt exposed and vulnerable, as if her classmates could see inside her soul to all the fear and pain she had carried from that day. Professor Kethlon was the first to speak. This is one of the most remarkable displays of individual courage in military history. Maya Torres, you held a defensive position alone for 14 continuous hours against overwhelming odds. Maya wanted to disappear. I had good reason to fight. The civilians included families with children. If I failed, they would all die. But that is exactly what makes it so impressive, Zara said. You fought not for glory or conquest, but to protect innocent lives. That gives meaning to the sacrifice. Luna leaned forward, studying the tactical displays. Your strategy was perfect. You used every possible advantage. Terrain choke points, improvised weapons, even the enemy owned momentum against them. Vexica made a sound of grudging respect. I have studied many battles, but I have never seen anything like this. Your species fights differently than any other. We rely on superior numbers or technology, but you rely on determination. The weeks that followed brought more footage and more revelations. Maya watched herself lead the impossible assault on the siege of New Geneva, where her tactical innovations had saved an entire planet. She saw the footage from Operation Broken Arrow, where her squad had turned a suicide mission into a miraculous victory. Each battle showed the same pattern: humans facing impossible odds with inadequate equipment, but winning through adaptability, creativity, and sheer refusal to give up. Her classmates began to understand that human warfare was not primitive, it was revolutionary. "Fight like you have nothing to lose," Professor Kethlon observed after viewing the final piece of footage. "Because you are young as a species, you have not learned that some battles cannot be won." Maya thought about that comment as she walked back to her room that night. Zara knocked on her door, carrying her usual offering of tea from her homeworld. "I have been thinking about what the professor said," Zara mentioned as they sat by the window. "Do you think he is right that humans fight differently because you have not learned limitations?" Maya considered the question carefully. Maybe he is right. Other species have ancient traditions that tell them what is possible and what is not. Humans are too new to know the rules, so we break them. Zara smiled. "That makes you dangerous allies and terrifying enemies. Your people will either change galactic warfare forever, or get yourselves killed trying impossible things." Maya laughed. "Both, probably, but that is what makes us human. We do not accept defeat just because the odds are bad." As the weeks passed, Maya noticed a change in how other students treated her. They no longer saw her as a primitive newcomer, but as a proven warrior with valuable knowledge. Even Vexica had begun asking her opinion about tactical problems. Professor Kethlon had also changed his approach to the class. Instead of just showing footage, he now asked Maya to explain the human perspective on each battle. The other students listened with genuine interest as she described the thinking behind tactics that seemed impossible. Maya realized that she was no longer hiding from her past. She was sharing it with beings who could appreciate what humans had accomplished. The academy had become exactly what she had hoped for, a place where different species could learn from each other. But Maya also knew that her real test was still coming. The footage had shown her past battles, but soon she would have to prove that human tactics could work alongside alien methods. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the academy trained students to face those dangers together. The legend of the human warrior was now known throughout the academy, but Maya Torres, the student, still had much to learn about building bridges between species who had been strangers until recently. The revelation of Maya's true identity had transformed not just her own experience at the academy, but the entire approach to studying military tactics. Professor Kethlon had requested special permission to extend the human combat analysis beyond the originally planned time frame. Other instructors began attending the classes to observe the discussions. Maya found herself in an unexpected role as a bridge between human military thinking and galactic strategic concepts. Her classmates no longer saw her as the primitive newcomer, but as a valuable source of insight into a completely different approach to warfare. The change became most apparent during a practical exercise in the academy simulation chambers. Professor Kethlon had designed a scenario where mixed species teams would face an impossible defensive situation. The goal was to test how different tactical approaches could work together. Maya was assigned to lead a team that included Zara, Vexica, Luna, and 3 other students from various species. The scenario placed them in command of a small outpost under attack by overwhelming enemy forces. It was clearly designed to test whether Maya could apply human tactics with alien capabilities. As the simulation began, Maya studied the tactical display showing enemy forces that outnumbered her team 10-1. Her teammates looked at her expectantly, waiting to see how the legendary human warrior would handle an impossible situation. "First question," Maya said, turning to her team. "What are your species' best natural abilities?" Zara answered immediately. "Elves have enhanced coordination and energy weapon precision. We work best in fluid formations that can adapt quickly." Nodded. "My people excel at pack tactics and close quarters combat. We are stronger and faster than most other species in direct confrontation." Luna added. "Crystal World citizens can create defensive energy barriers, and we have excellent analytical abilities for predicting enemy movements." Maya listened to each team member describe their capabilities, then began sketching a plan that combined human adaptive thinking with alien advantages. Her approach shocked her teammates because it ignored traditional tactical doctrine completely. We are going to split our forces into 3 groups, Maya explained. Zara, you will lead the elves in hit-and-run attacks, using your mobility to stay ahead of enemy formations. Vexica, your pack will defend the central stronghold using your strength advantage in close combat. What about the rest of us? Luna asked. You will coordinate with me to create a series of false positions. The enemy expects us to defend the outpost directly. Instead, we are going to make them think the real defense is somewhere else, while we prepare the actual trap. The other students looked confused and concerned. Maya's plan seemed to violate every rule of military strategy they had learned, but as the simulation progressed, her approach began to show its brilliance. The enemy attacked where Maya had predicted, focusing their assault on the obvious defensive positions, while they were engaged with false targets. Maya's real forces moved into position, using routes that the enemy had not considered. Watch how the human coordinates everything, Professor. Kethlon observed to his fellow instructors. She is not just commanding the battle, she is conducting it like a Maya used each species' strengths in ways their own. Military traditions had never considered the elves became a mobile harassment force that disrupted enemy communications. Vexica pack fought as shock troops that broke enemy formations at critical moments. The Crystal World students created defensive barriers in unexpected places that channeled the attack into kill zones. The simulation ended with Maya forces achieving a complete victory. Despite being heavily outnumbered, her team had worked together using tactics that combined the best elements of each species' approach to warfare. After the exercise, Professor Kethlon called Maya to his office for a private discussion. His tentacles moved with what she had learned, indicated deep thought and concern. Maya Torres, he began, I must confess that I requested your presence at this academy for reasons beyond simple cultural exchange. Maya felt a chill of concern. What do you mean, Professor? The Galactic Intelligence Services have been monitoring human military development with great interest. Your species has achieved remarkable success against enemies that should have defeated you easily. We needed to understand how. Maya realized that her cover story had been false from the beginning. You knew who I was before I arrived. Of course, Kethlon replied. The Battle of Proxima Station is studied in military academies across the galaxy. Your tactical innovations have been copied by several species already, but we needed to understand the thinking behind the tactics, not just the results. Maya felt manipulated but also oddly relieved. So this has all been an elaborate intelligence operation? Not entirely, Kethlon said, his voice becoming warmer. You are genuinely here to learn, and your classmates' interactions with you have been completely natural. What we discovered is that human military effectiveness comes not from any single innovation but from a completely different mindset. Maya waited for him to continue, sensing that something important was coming. Your species does not accept the concept of impossible victories. Kethlon explained. Every other civilization in the galaxy has learned to recognize when a battle cannot be won. Humans apparently never learned this lesson. Is that good or bad? Maya asked. That depends on the situation, Kethlon replied. In most cases, it means humans take unnecessary risks and suffer avoidable casualties, but in truly desperate circumstances, it means you find solutions that no one else would even attempt. Over the following weeks, Maya's relationship with her classmates continued to evolve. They began coming to her with tactical problems that their own military training could not solve. Maya found herself teaching informal classes where she explained human approaches to warfare. The most significant change came from Zara, who had become fascinated with the idea of combining elven precision with human adaptability together. They developed new tactical concepts that merged their species' strengths in ways neither could achieve alone. Vexica also began experimenting with human ideas about individual initiative within pack structures. Her people had always fought as a coordinated group, but Maya showed her how individual creativity could enhance pack effectiveness. Luna began incorporating human unpredictability into Crystal World defensive strategies. Instead of relying solely on calculated barrier placements, she learned to create dynamic defenses that adapted to changing battle conditions. The real test came when the Academy received an emergency alert. A research station in the outer system was under attack by unknown raiders. The Academy military response team was deployed immediately with Maya included as a tactical advisor. As their ship approached the embattled station, Maya found herself working alongside alien officers to coordinate a rescue mission. The enemy was using advanced stealth technology and had surrounded the research facility with a sensor jamming field. This is a difficult situation, Admiral Vorthok, the mission commander said as he studied the tactical displays. We cannot get accurate intelligence about enemy numbers or position. Looked at the sensor readings and recognized a familiar pattern. The enemy was using the same type of overwhelming force approach that she had faced at Proxima Station and Titan Nebula. Admiral, she said carefully, I think I know how to break through their defenses. The bridge crew turned to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Maya realized this was her chance to prove that human tactics could work in real galactic warfare, not just Academy simulations. The enemy expects us to probe their defenses carefully and retreat if we encounter heavy resistance, Maya explained instead. We should attack immediately with maximum force before they can fully deploy. Admiral Vorthok tentacles moved nervously. That seems extremely risky, Maya Torres. If we fail, the research station will be lost. Maya met his gaze steadily. If we do not act quickly, the research station will be lost anyway. The enemy is systematically destroying it while we debate tactics. After a moment of consideration, the Admiral nodded. Proceed with your plan, Maya Torres, but remember that many lives depend on your judgment. Maya felt the familiar weight of command responsibility as she coordinated the attack. Her plan was classic human doctrine, aggressive action based on incomplete information, but she also incorporated lessons learned from her alien classmates' era. Led the Elven fighters in precision strikes that disabled enemy communication arrays. Vexica commanded the assault troops that breached the enemy perimeter. Luna coordinated defensive barriers that protected the rescue ships. The battle was fierce but brief. The enemy had not expected such immediate, aggressive action, and their formations collapsed under the coordinated assault. The research station was saved with minimal casualties. Their ship returned to the Academy. Maya reflected on how much had changed since her arrival. She had come to learn about alien military traditions, but had ended up teaching them about human approaches to warfare. Professor Kethlon found her in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. Maya, you have exceeded every expectation we had for this exchange program. Maya smiled. I think the program exceeded my expectations, too, Professor. I came here thinking humans had to learn to fight like other species instead. I learned that our differences make us stronger when we work together. That is perhaps the most important lesson any species can learn, Kethlon replied. The galaxy faces many threats, and no single approach to warfare will be sufficient. We need the precision of elves, the coordination of Saros, the calculation of cephalopods, and the adaptability of humans. Maya nodded, watching the Academy station grow larger in the viewport. She had found her place in galactic civilization, not by becoming less human, but by helping others understand what humanity could contribute. The exchange program that had begun as an intelligence operation had become something much more important. It was the beginning of a new era, where species differences were seen as strengths, rather than limitations. As Maya prepared for her final semester at the Academy, she knew that her real education was just beginning. The galaxy was full of challenges that would require every species to contribute their unique abilities. Maya Torres had come to the Academy as a student, hiding her past. Now she was leaving as a teacher, ready to help build bridges between species that had been strangers for too long. The human approach to warfare was no longer a curiosity, it was an essential part of galactic defense. The future would bring new battles and new challenges, but Maya was confident that humans and aliens working together could face whatever dangers awaited them in the vast darkness between the stars.